I never thought a single text message could unravel 20 years of marriage. But that Tuesday night, standing in my own kitchen, I learned just how quietly betrayal can build until it shatters everything. My name is Clara Jensen. I'm 45, a mother, a wife who believed in the life we'd built in our quiet suburban home, until the phone lit up, until she showed up at my door. This is the story of how I stayed calm while everything burned, and how I made sure the truth burned brighter. I was wiping down the granite counter when it happened. The kitchen smelled of garlic and rosemary, the way it always did on family dinner nights. Upstairs, the shower ran steadily, Mark taking his usual long, hot shower after his late shift. I'd just set the last plate in the rack when his phone, a silver iPhone 13, left casually on the island, buzzed softly. The screen glowed in the dim light. Last night meant everything to me. My hand froze mid-wipe, the dish towel dangling from my fingers. I stared at those words, simple black text on a white background, from an unknown number. My heart didn't race at first. It just stopped. Then it thudded hard. Once, twice, like it was catching up to reality. I don't snoop. I never have. But in that moment, something inside me shifted. I picked up the phone. His passcode was still our wedding anniversary, July 14th. Pathetic how easy it was. I opened the messages. Just enough to see the thread. Enough to know. My thumbs moved before my brain could stop them. I typed back, "Come over, she's gone." I hit send. The regret hit instantly, a cold wave down my spine, but the message was already gone, delivered. I placed the phone exactly where I'd found it, and stood there, listening. The shower water continued its rhythm. The grandfather clock in the living room ticked. The refrigerator hummed low and steady. 12 minutes. I counted every one. I lowered myself onto a bar stool, hands folded in my lap. My reflection in the dark window looked like a stranger. Calm face, steady eyes. Inside, my thoughts spun in tight circles. Who is she? How long? Why tonight? But I didn't cry. I didn't call upstairs. I just waited. The doorbell rang. The sound cut through the house like a blade. I walked to the front door, smoothing the hem of my navy cashmere sweater, and opened it. Eleanor Vance stood on my porch, 47, elegant even in the porch light, wearing a tailored charcoal coat and subtle makeup that said she hadn't come by accident. Her face paled when she saw me. "Where is Mark?" The words hung between us. I stepped aside. "Come in." She hesitated only a second before crossing the threshold, her black leather heels clicking softly on the hardwood. The scent of her perfume, Chanel No. 5, filled the entryway. It was familiar in a way that turned my stomach. I closed the door behind her with a quiet click. We stood in the living room, neither of us sitting. The silence stretched. Upstairs, the shower stopped. Footsteps moved across the bathroom floor. Mark came down the stairs, hair still damp, wearing a gray t-shirt and joggers. He reached the landing and froze. His eyes flicked from me to Eleanor and back. No explosion of shock, just a flicker of something calculated, surprised that I was there witnessing this. "Clara," he started, voice low. I didn't answer him. I watched Eleanor instead. The way she glanced at him, a silent exchange passing between them. They weren't scrambling for excuses. They had been here before, in this moment, in their minds at least. The realization settled over me like frost. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This had been building quietly, right under my roof. Mark descended the last steps. "This isn't what it looks like." Eleanor touched the small gold locket at her throat, composing herself. "We should talk like adults, Clara. All of us." I studied them both. The careful distance they kept. The way their eyes met for support. My voice came out even, almost gentle. "How long have you both been waiting for me to step aside?" The question landed. Mark shifted his weight. Eleanor's lips pressed together. For the first time, neither had an immediate reply. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked louder in the quiet. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The steam from Mark's shower still lingered faintly in the air, mixing with Eleanor's perfume and the remnants of our family dinner. Everything ordinary, now poisoned. I felt the weight of the house around me, the photos on the walls of David and Lily as children, the kids' old soccer trophies on the shelf, the life I had poured into these rooms. Eleanor started to speak again, something about misunderstandings, but I raised one hand slightly, not commanding, just enough. Mark was in the shower. Then his phone lit up. And now you're here. Mark ran a hand through his damp hair. Clara, please. Let's not make this harder. I met his eyes, those familiar blue eyes that had once looked at me with promise. I'm not making it harder, Mark. I'm just not making it easy for you anymore. The words hung there. Eleanor glanced toward the front door, clearly wanting to leave, but trapped by the moment. When she finally moved to go, she brushed past the side table, and a small cream-colored envelope slipped from her coat pocket onto the floor. She didn't notice. I waited until the door closed behind her, then I bent down and picked it up. Inside was a printed sheet about a lakeside condo in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, registered to Vance Harbor Consulting. My fingers tightened on the paper. Mark stood there, still damp from the shower that had started all of this. For the first time in years, I looked at my husband and didn't recognize the man staring back. Mark closed the front door after Eleanor left, the latch clicking like a period at the end of a sentence I never wanted to read. The house felt smaller, the walls closer. I stood in the living room with the envelope still in my hand, its edges sharp against my palm. He turned to face me, water still beating on his neck from the shower. "This isn't what you think," he said, the words coming out practiced, almost rehearsed. "Eleanor and we've been talking, that's all." I didn't move. The grandfather clock kept its steady rhythm, marking seconds that felt heavier now. I could still smell her Chanel No. 5 lingering near the door, mixing with the faint scent of his Old Spice shampoo. "Talking," I repeated, tasting the word. It felt too small for what I had seen in their eyes. Eleanor's black Mercedes hadn't pulled away yet. I heard the engine idle outside before it finally drove off. Mark stepped closer, hands open like he was approaching a startled animal. "We should sit down. Talk like adults." Adults. I echoed the same word Eleanor had used. They really had coordinated their lines. I folded the envelope and slipped it into my sweater pocket. "How long have you two been preparing for this conversation?" He hesitated, glancing toward the stairs as if David and Lily might suddenly appear, even though David was across the state at UW-Madison, and Lily was away at college in California. "A few months. It just happened. Work stuff turned into more. But our marriage has been dead for a while, Clara. You know that." The words landed like stones in still water. I searched his face for guilt, for shame. There was discomfort, yes, but no real surprise, no panic. They had already built their story together, brick by careful brick. I thought of all the late nights he'd blamed on projects, the weekends Eleanor had shown up at community events with that polished smile, always asking the right questions about our family. "She knows things," I said quietly. "Where I visit my mother in Kenosha on Thursdays, that Lily's dorm is 2 hours away by plane. Even which side of the bed you sleep on now." My voice stayed level, but inside, the pieces clicked together. Eleanor wasn't just a colleague, she was a friend of a friend, someone I'd occasionally seen at neighborhood gatherings. The betrayal was deeper, more insidious. "Clara, please," Mark said, his voice softening, a new tactic. "Let's not make this ugly. We can be civil for the kids." "Civil?" I laughed, a short, sharp sound that surprised even myself. "You've been planning a new life, a new home, while I've been making your favorite dinners and folding your laundry. And you want to be civil?" I pulled the condo papers from my pocket. "Is this part of the civility, Mark? Your new lakeside retreat in Lake Geneva?" His face went white. He hadn't expected me to have that. That's just an investment idea. Nothing concrete." "Nothing concrete?" I held up the paper. "It's registered to Vance Harbor Consulting. Is that Eleanor's company? Or a clever little shell you two cooked up?" He stammered. It's complicated." "No, Mark. It's not complicated. It's a lie. A long, carefully constructed lie." I looked around our living room, at the life we had built, the memories etched into every corner. "You want to talk like adults? Fine. But we'll do it on my terms." I walked to the kitchen and picked up my phone. "I'm calling my sister, Sarah. She's a lawyer." His eyes widened. "No, Clara, don't. Let's just talk. Just us." "Too late for just us, Mark. You brought Eleanor into this. Now I'm bringing Sarah." I dialed, my hand steady. Sarah answered on the second ring. "Hey, sis. Can you come over? I need your advice. It's about Mark." I kept my voice calm, almost casual, but the message was clear. The game had changed. Sarah arrived an hour later, her no-nonsense demeanor a welcome contrast to the swirling chaos in my head. She listened patiently as I recounted the evening, occasionally glancing at Mark, who sat stiffly on the couch, avoiding eye contact. When I finished, she took the condo papers from my hand. "This is good, Clara. Very good. Premeditation, use of joint funds for a secret asset. This strengthens your position significantly." Mark finally spoke, his voice strained. "Sarah, you don't understand. Our marriage has been over for a long time. Clara and I just drifted apart." Sarah fixed him with a steely gaze. "Drifting apart doesn't involve secret condos and late-night texts, Mark. That's called deceit. And in a divorce proceeding, deceit has consequences." She turned back to me. "First things first, Clara, document everything. Every text, every email, every suspicious transaction. Don't move out. Don't sign anything. And don't let him know how much you truly know. Let him think you're still in shock. The more he relaxes, the more he'll slip." Over the next few days, I became a silent investigator in my own home. I forwarded suspicious emails to Sarah, photographed bank statements, and noted Mark's increasingly erratic behavior. He tried to be charming, bringing flowers, making coffee in the mornings, reminiscing about old times. I accepted it all with a quiet grace, offering little in return. Each night, I added new observations to my private notes. The way he checked his phone when he thought I wasn't looking, the sudden interest in my mother's health, as if trying to gauge my plans. Then Lily called from college. "Dad asked me yesterday if I thought you'd be happier closer to Grandma," she said, her voice uncertain. "He made it sound like you were the one thinking about moving. Mom, is something wrong?" The manipulation stung, but I kept my voice warm. "We're working through some grown-up stuff, sweetheart. Your dad and I have been together a long time. Don't worry. Focus on your classes." After the call, I sat in the quiet kitchen and felt the full weight of it. Mark wasn't just leaving, he was trying to make me the one who left, painting me as the unstable one, the one who needed space. The strategy was cruel in its patience. Sarah's words echoed in my mind. "Play the long game." Mark's mask showed small cracks as the week wore on. He grew restless when I didn't argue or cry. One evening, he found me reviewing old photo albums deliberately. "Remember that trip to the cabin?" he asked, sitting beside me. "I remember," I said softly. But I closed the album before he could steer the conversation. The old memories no longer softened me the way they once might have. They felt like pages from someone else's book now. That night, as rain pattered against the windows, I stood in the doorway of Lily's empty room. Her posters still hung on the walls, a few stuffed animals on the bed. Mark had been willing to wait until she was gone, to upend everything. The thought hardened my resolve further. I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was protecting the truth before he could rewrite it completely. The day of our 20th anniversary arrived, a date that now felt like a cruel joke. Mark had, surprisingly, insisted on a dinner out, just the two of us, at the upscale Italian restaurant where he'd proposed. I agreed, a plan forming in my mind. I wore the dress he'd bought me for our 10th anniversary, a deep sapphire blue silk. I looked in the mirror, a calm resolve in my eyes. This wasn't a celebration. It was a confrontation. We arrived at the restaurant. Mark was overly attentive, pulling out my chair, ordering my favorite Pinot Grigio. He even raised a toast. "To us, Clara, to 2 decades." I clinked my glass against his, a faint smile on my lips. "To 2 decades," I echoed. "And to honesty." He looked uncomfortable. Of course, honesty. Just then, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Sarah. "She's here. Table 5. I glanced up, my eyes scanning the room, and there she was, Eleanor Vance, sitting at a table across the restaurant, with a man I didn't recognize. She looked up, caught my eye, and her smile faltered. Mark, following my gaze, turned, his face drained of color. "Eleanor?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Yes," I said, my voice clear and steady. "And I believe that's her husband, Robert, with her. I invited them." Mark stared at me, then at Eleanor, then back at me. You invited them?" "It's our anniversary, Mark," I said, picking up my fork. "I thought it was time we all had a truly honest conversation. Don't you think?" Eleanor, seeing the trap, quickly rose from her table. pulling Robert with her. She rushed towards us, her face a mask of panic. "Mark, what is she doing?" Robert, a tall, bewildered man in a gray suit, looked from his wife to Mark to me. "Eleanor, what is going on?" I turned to Robert. "Hello, Robert. I'm Clara, Mark's wife. I believe our spouses have been having an affair, and I believe they've been planning to buy a lakeside condo together." I pushed the printed condo details, the Vance Harbor consulting document, across the table towards him. Robert picked up the paper, his eyes widening as he read. Eleanor gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Mark sat frozen, utterly speechless. The elegant restaurant, usually filled with soft murmurs, suddenly felt silent around our table. "This isn't true," Eleanor stammered, but her eyes darted to Mark, a silent plea for him to intervene. "It is true, Robert," I said, my voice calm, almost clinical. "And I have the texts, the emails, and the financial records to prove it. Mark even tried to convince our daughter that I was the one who wanted to move out, to make me look unstable." Robert looked at his wife, then at Mark, a slow fury building in his eyes. "Eleanor, is this true?" She burst into tears, shaking her head, but no words came out. Mark finally found his voice, a desperate whisper. "Clara, please, not here, not like this." "Like this, Mark," I said, meeting his gaze directly, "because this is the truth, and it's long overdue." I stood up, my sapphire dress shimmering under the restaurant lights. "I think our dinner here is finished, but our conversation, the real one, is just beginning." I looked at Robert. "I suggest you talk to your wife, and I suggest you talk to a good lawyer." With that, I turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving Mark and Eleanor to face the wreckage they had created. Sarah was waiting for me outside, a small, knowing smile on her face. "Well done, Clara. Perfectly executed." The days after the anniversary dinner moved slowly, like waking from a long, disorienting dream. Mark sent text after text, asking to talk. Eleanor emailed a long, carefully worded apology that somehow still cast her as the misunderstood party. I read them once, then forwarded the relevant ones to Sarah. No replies from me, not yet. I met with Sarah again early the following week. We began the formal process, protective orders for the finances, petitions for temporary arrangements. She reminded me to keep moving forward methodically. "You don't have to destroy him," she said. "Just make sure the truth does its work." That felt right. I wasn't interested in revenge that left me bitter. I wanted freedom from the weight I had been carrying for far too long. Our son, David, came by the house a few evenings later. We sat on the back porch as the leaves turned deeper shades of red and gold. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said, staring into his coffee. "I thought you were just being distant lately. I didn't see what Dad was doing." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "None of us saw the full picture until we had to. That's okay. We see it now." Lily stayed a few extra days before returning to college. One afternoon, she found me in the kitchen reorganizing the pantry, an old habit when my mind needed order. She wrapped her arms around me from behind and rested her chin on my shoulder. "You didn't embarrass us," she whispered again. "He did. I'm proud of you for staying calm. I don't know if I could have." Her words healed something I hadn't realized was still raw. We cried a little then, not from pain, but from release. Mother and daughter standing together in the same kitchen where that first message had appeared. I returned to the places that had started it all. The bathroom where Mark had been showering, the counter where his silver iPhone 13 had lit up, the front door where Eleanor had stood, expecting an empty house. Each spot felt smaller now, less powerful. I stood in the steam of my own shower one morning and let the hot water run over my shoulders, washing away the constant tension I had normalized for years. I had stopped carrying the need to make myself smaller to keep the peace. Stopped carrying the fear that speaking up would break everything. The truth had already broken what needed breaking. What remained was space for me, for my children, for whatever came next. Mark moved out 2 weeks later. The divorce would take time, but the lines were drawn clearly. He looked older when he loaded the last box into his car. Part of me still mourned the man I had married, but I no longer mourned the version he had become. On a quiet evening, I stood at the kitchen window again. The house was mine in a way it hadn't been in years. Not because of victory, but because of honesty. Sometimes the doorbell doesn't bring the person who ruins your life. sometimes it brings the truth you were finally ready to face. This story is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.